Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora's edge, watching the massive alien ship grow larger on the main screen. The Zeltharian vessel looked like a dark crystal mountain floating in space, all sharp angles and gleaming surfaces that caught the light from nearby stars. "First contact protocol is active, Captain," said Commander Lisa Hayes from her position at the communications console. Her voice was calm and professional, but Jake could hear the excitement underneath. This was what they had all trained for their entire lives. The diplomatic mission had taken 3 months to reach this point in space, far from Earth and human colonies. The Zeltharian hegemony controlled 12 star systems and had agreed to meet with humans for the first time. Everything had to go perfectly. "Dr. Carter, are you ready?" Jake asked. Dr. Ben Carter looked up from his tablet, where he had been studying the latest data about Zeltharian culture. "As ready as anyone can be to meet a completely alien species, Captain. Their communication patterns suggest they value order and hierarchy above all else." Jake nodded. The Zeltharians had been polite but formal in their messages. They seemed interested in trade agreements and cultural exchange, which was exactly what Earth wanted to hear. Humanity needed allies out here in the galaxy. The communication system crackled to life. "Human vessel Aurora's Edge. This is Admiral Krexthal of the Zeltharian flagship Sovereign's Claw. You are cleared to dock at Port 7. Prepare for formal greeting ceremony." "Acknowledged, Admiral," Lisa replied smoothly. "We are honored by your invitation." An hour later, Jake found himself walking through corridors that seemed carved from black crystal. Everything about the Zeltharian ship felt cold and precise. The walls had no decorations, just smooth surfaces that reflected their images back at them. The greeting ceremony took place in a vast chamber with a ceiling that stretched up so high, it disappeared into darkness. Admiral Krexthal waited for them at the center, surrounded by a dozen other Zeltharians. Jake's first thought was that they looked like walking jewels. The Zeltharians stood nearly 8 feet tall, with bodies covered in scales that shifted from deep purple to silver depending on how the light hit them. Their faces were elongated with large eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "Welcome, humans," Admiral Krexthal said. His voice had a musical quality like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I am curious to meet the species that calls itself the dominant life form of Earth." "Thank you for receiving us, Admiral," Jake replied, giving a slight bow as Lisa had suggested. "We come in peace, hoping to build friendship between our peoples." Krexthal's head tilted slightly. "Peace, yes, we have studied this concept in your transmissions. Fascinating how a species with your history speaks so often of peace." Dr. Carter stepped forward. "Our history has taught us the value of cooperation, Admiral. We've learned from our mistakes. Have you?" Another Zeltharian spoke, this one with scales that held more gold than the others. "We have reviewed your historical data transmissions. Wars, genocide, environmental destruction. Your species has quite the record of violence." Jake felt his jaw tighten but kept his voice steady. "Every species has a difficult past. We've grown beyond those days." "Grown beyond?" Krexthal made a sound that might have been laughter. "Just 300 years ago, your people were killing each other over resources and territory. In cosmic terms, that was yesterday. But we did stop," Lisa said firmly. "We united our world and reached for the stars together. Under the threat of extinction, yes," the golden-scaled Zeltharian continued. "Climate change and resource depletion forced cooperation. Not exactly a moral awakening." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Jake could feel his crew's discomfort, but he kept his expression neutral. This was still diplomacy, even if it was getting uncomfortable. "We believe that actions matter more than motivations," Jake said carefully. "Humanity has been at peace for over 2 centuries now." Krexthal moved closer, and Jake noticed that the alien's eyes never seemed to blink. "Peace maintained through strength and surveillance, according to your own records. Your world government monitors every citizen, controls resource distribution, and maintains a military force capable of destroying your own planet several times over." "Security measures," Dr. Carter explained. "We've learned the importance of preventing conflict before it starts." "Preventing conflict," Krexthal repeated slowly. "Or suppressing natural instincts. We have studied your species' biological data. Apex predators who evolve through competition and aggression. Do you really believe you can suppress millions of years of evolutionary programming with a few centuries of social engineering?" Jake felt something cold in his stomach. This wasn't going the way any of them had expected. We believe in our ability to choose our own path regardless of our origins. Choose, the Admiral said, and this time Jake was sure the sound was laughter. Humans always speak of choice, but when resources become scarce, when survival is threatened, what choices will you make then? The same choices we've made for the past 200 years, Lisa said. To work together instead of fighting each other. Krexthal exchanged glances with his companions. Something passed between them that Jake couldn't read. Perhaps, or perhaps you simply haven't faced the right pressures yet. The golden-scaled Zeltharian stepped forward. We have dealt with many species, humans. Young races often believe they have transcended their nature. They speak of peace and cooperation until their first real test comes. What kind of test? Dr. Carter asked. The test of survival, Krexthal replied. When everything you care about is threatened, when diplomacy fails and strength is the only option left, what will you do then? Jake met the alien's unblinking stare. We'll do whatever is necessary to protect our people. But we'll exhaust every peaceful option first, will you? Krexthal moved even closer. Even if those peaceful options cost lives? Even if delay means losing everything? We believe there's always another way, Jake said. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped back and made a gesture that might have been dismissive. Perhaps you do. The Zeltharian hegemony has guided many young species through their development. Species who believed, as you do, that they had moved beyond their primitive nature. Guided them how? Lisa asked. By providing structure, discipline, and proper oversight, the golden-scaled alien replied. Left to their own devices, young species inevitably fall back into chaos and violence. But under proper guidance, they can achieve true civilization. Jake felt every muscle in his body tense. Are you suggesting that humanity needs guidance? I am suggesting that humanity, like all young species, would benefit from the wisdom of their elders. Krexthal said smoothly. The Zeltharian hegemony has maintained peace and order for over 10,000 years. We could teach you to do the same. We appreciate the offer, Jake said carefully, but humanity prefers to chart its own course. The silence that followed lasted too long. Jake could see his crew exchanging glances, all of them picking up on the sudden tension in the room. Of course you do, Krexthal finally said. Young species always do, but preferences and reality are often very different things. The Admiral turned away, signaling that the meeting was over. We will consider what we have learned here today. Your ship is welcome to remain docked while we deliberate. As they walked back through the crystal corridors, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something had just gone very wrong. The Zeltharians hadn't been interested in trade or cultural exchange. They had been studying humans like specimens in a laboratory. Captain, Lisa whispered as they reached their ship. I don't think they see us as equals. Jake looked back at the massive alien vessel surrounding their small ship. No, Lisa. I don't think they see us as equals at all. What worried him most was the look in Krexthal's eyes when they had talked about choices and survival. It hadn't been curiosity or even condescension. It had been the look of someone planning a test. 3 weeks had passed since the first meeting with the Zeltharians, and Captain Jake Morrison was starting to feel like they were being watched. Every day, more alien ships appeared in the surrounding space. The Zeltharians claimed they were just curious observers, but something about their formation made Jake's military instincts scream warnings. Captain, incoming priority transmission from Earth Command. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell called from his station. The tactical officer's voice carried an edge that made everyone on the bridge look up. Put it through, Jake ordered. Admiral Kate Stone's face appeared on the main screen, her expression grim. Jake, we have a problem. The colony ship New Horizon has gone missing. Jake felt his blood turn cold. The New Horizon was carrying 50,000 civilians to establish humanity's first colony outside the solar system. Families, children, scientists, and engineers who had volunteered to build a new world for humanity's future. When did we lose contact? Jake asked. 18 hours ago. Their last transmission came from the edge of Zeltharian space. They were following the approved flight path well within neutral territory. Dr. Ben Carter stepped closer to the screen. Admiral, could there have been a mechanical failure? Those colony ships are massive, but they're not built for combat situations. That's what we hoped at first, Admiral Stone replied. But our long-range sensors picked up debris at their last known position. Debris that shows signs of weapons fire. The bridge fell silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Are you saying the New Horizon was attacked? I'm saying 50,000 human civilians are missing, and there's evidence of a battle at their last position. The debris field matches Zeltharian energy weapons. Commander Lisa Hayes looked up from her console. Captain, I'm reading increased activity from the Zeltharian fleet. They're moving ships into position around us. Jake turned to face the main screen where Admiral Stone was still waiting. Admiral, I need permission to confront the Zeltharians about this. Permission granted. But Jake, be careful. If they did take the New Horizon, we don't know what they're planning. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Jake looked around at his crew. These people had served with him for years, through exploration missions and diplomatic encounters. But nothing had prepared them for this. Ryan scanned the Zeltharian flagship. I want to know everything about their weapons and defenses. Already on it, Captain, Ryan replied, his fingers flying over his console. They're armed, but their energy signatures don't match typical military configurations. It's like they're built more for intimidation than actual fighting. Maybe they've never had to actually fight, Lisa suggested. Their entire approach has been about psychological pressure and superior technology. Jake nodded. That matched what they had observed during the negotiations. The Zeltharians acted like they had never been seriously challenged by another species. Contact Admiral Krexthal, Jake ordered. Tell him I need to speak with him immediately about a matter of urgent importance. The response came back within minutes. Krexthal would see them in the same crystal chamber where they had first met. This time, the walk through the Zeltharian ship felt different. The corridors seemed darker, and Jake noticed more armed guards at key positions. When they reached the main chamber, Krexthal was waiting with the same group of advisors as before. Captain Morrison, the Admiral said, his musical voice carrying no warmth. You seem distressed. A human colony ship has disappeared in your territory, Jake said directly. 50,000 civilians are missing. Krexthal's head tilted slightly. Disappeared? That is unfortunate. Space travel can be dangerous for inexperienced species. The debris field shows weapons damage, Dr. Carter said. Zeltharian weapons, does it? The golden-scaled advisor stepped forward. How interesting. Perhaps they encountered pirates using stolen technology. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice level. Admiral, I need your help to find these people. They're civilians, including families with children. Of course, Krexthal replied smoothly. We will certainly investigate this matter. However, I should mention that we have located your missing colonists. The admission hit like a physical blow. Jake stared at the alien leader, processing what he had just heard. You found them? Indeed. They were in distress when we discovered them. Their ship was failing, life support systems breaking down. We were forced to evacuate them to a safe location. Where? Lisa demanded. Krexthal made a gesture that might have been regret. A primitive world called Kepler 442c. It was the only suitable planet within range of our rescue ships. Unfortunately, it lacks the technological infrastructure your people are accustomed to. Dr. Carter stepped forward. What do you mean by primitive? No cities, no technology, no modern conveniences, the Golden Advisor explained. Essentially a wilderness world. But it has breathable atmosphere and adequate resources for survival. Jake felt the room spinning slightly. You're telling me you stranded 50,000 civilians on a wilderness planet? We saved 50,000 lives, Krexthal corrected. Though I admit the conditions are basic. They will need to learn to survive without their technological dependencies. That's insane, Ryan said. His tactical officer training finally overriding diplomacy. These people include elderly citizens, children, disabled individuals. They can't survive on a primitive world without support. Humans are remarkably adaptable, Krexthal said calmly. Your species evolved in primitive conditions originally. Perhaps this experience will teach them valuable lessons about self-reliance. Jake realized what was happening. This wasn't a rescue mission gone wrong. This was deliberate. You're testing us. Testing? The Admiral's large eyes seemed to gleam. What an interesting way to describe a humanitarian rescue operation. You destroyed their ship and dumped them on that planet to see how we would react, Jake continued, his anger finally showing in his voice. We saved lives that would have otherwise been lost, Krexthal replied. But I suppose your reaction to this situation will be educational. Lisa moved closer to Jake. Captain, they're studying us like lab animals. The golden advisor made that chiming sound that passed for laughter among their species. Every species believes they are unique, special, different from all the others. But when faced with real crisis, they all react the same way. And how is that? Dr. Carter asked. They revert to their primitive nature, Krexthal answered. All the civilization, all the high ideals, all the talk of peace and cooperation disappears when survival is at stake. What remains is the animal underneath. Jake understood now. The Zeltharians had been studying humanity's transmissions, learning about human history and psychology. They had taken the colonists not as an act of aggression, but as an experiment. You want to see if we'll abandon diplomacy and become violent, Jake said. We want to see what humans really are when the mask of civilization is removed, Krexthal confirmed. Will you beg us for help? Will you try to bargain with us? Or will you show us the predators that your species evolved from? What happens to the colonists while you're conducting this experiment? Lisa asked. They will survive or they will not, the Admiral replied with chilling indifference. Natural selection was once the primary force that shaped your species. Perhaps it still is. Jake looked around the chamber, seeing the alien faces watching him with scientific curiosity. They weren't evil, he realized. They were researchers studying a specimen that they found mildly interesting. I want coordinates to the planet, Jake said. I'm sure you do, Krexthal replied. But first we need to see how you handle the situation. Will you threaten us? Will you try to attack our ships? Will you contact your military and demand they send warships? I'll do whatever it takes to get those people back, Jake said quietly. Yes, Krexthal said, and for the first time Jake heard satisfaction in the alien's voice. I believe you will. As they walked back to their ship, Jake's mind was racing. The Zeltharians had just revealed that they saw humans as nothing more than interesting animals. They had 50,000 hostages on a primitive world, and they were waiting to see how far they could push humanity before the civilized mask came off. Captain, Ryan said quietly as they reached their ship, I'm reading energy buildups in the Zeltharian fleet. They're preparing for something. Jake looked back at the alien ships surrounding them. The Zeltharians thought they knew what humans would do when pushed. They expected pleading, bargaining, or primitive violence. They had no idea what they had just awakened. Send a coded message to Earth, Jake ordered. Tell Admiral Stone that the situation has changed. What message, sir? Jake thought about 50,000 civilians struggling to survive on an alien world, while their captors watched with scientific detachment. He thought about species that believed they could manipulate and control humanity like test subjects. Tell her the gloves are coming off. The message reached Earth Command in less than 6 hours. Admiral Kate Stone stood in the Situation Room, staring at the holographic display that showed the positions of human and Zeltharian fleets. Around her, the top military commanders of humanity waited for her decision. They're treating our people like laboratory animals, General Sam Parker said, his voice tight with controlled anger. 50,000 civilians dumped on a primitive world to see how we'll react. The question is, how do we react? Asked Dr. Alex Turner, the military historian who had been pulled into the emergency meeting. The Zeltharians control 12 star systems and have technology that might be superior to ours. Admiral Stone turned to face the assembled officers. Gentlemen, ladies, I'm about to share something that's been classified for over 200 years. Dr. Turner, please activate Project Apex. The room's main screen flickered and changed to show a series of documents marked with the highest security. Classifications. Dr. Turner's eyes widened as he read the first page. Project Apex was initiated after the Great Unification, Admiral Stone continued. The question was simple. What would happen if humanity encountered a hostile alien species that was technologically superior to us? We studied that question extensively, Dr. Turner said, scrolling through the data. But these files suggest the research went far beyond theoretical planning. It did. We asked ourselves what advantages humanity might have that other species wouldn't expect. What made us unique as a species? General Parker leaned forward. And what did you find? That humans are the only known species that actively hunts other apex predators, Admiral Stone replied. We're persistence hunters who evolved to track down and kill anything that threatened us, regardless of size or strength. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Turner was still reading through the files, his expression growing more serious with each page. According to this research, humans are also the only species that fights for sport. maintains standing armies during peacetime, and develops weapons capable of destroying our own planet, he said slowly. More importantly, Admiral Stone continued, we're the only species that has ever successfully suppressed our own aggressive instincts through social engineering. Every other species we've studied either remains permanently aggressive or never develops significant aggression in the first place. What does that mean practically? Asked Commander Janet Cole from Fleet Intelligence. It means that when we choose to be peaceful, it's because we're actively controlling something very dangerous, Admiral Stone explained. And when we stop controlling it, she let the sentence hang in the air. General Parker was the first to understand. The Zeltharians think they're studying a domesticated species, he said. They have no idea they're poking a sleeping tiger. Exactly. They've interpreted our peaceful behavior as weakness rather than restraint. Admiral Stone turned back to the display. Dr. Turner, what did Project Apex conclude about asymmetric warfare scenarios? Dr. Turner was still reading, but he looked up with a grim expression. That human tactics would be completely unpredictable to alien species. Our entire approach to warfare is based on fighting opponents who are stronger, faster, or better armed than we are. Every predator on Earth was physically superior to early humans, Admiral Stone agreed. We won through intelligence, cooperation, and absolute ruthlessness when threatened. The meeting continued for 6 hours. By the end, humanity had a plan that would have horrified the peaceful citizens of Earth if they had known about it. But then that was the point. The peaceful citizens existed because others were willing to do terrible things to protect them. Meanwhile, on the Aurora's edge, Captain Jake Morrison was conducting his own preparations. Commander Lisa Hayes had volunteered for something that might be a suicide mission, and he was trying to talk her out of it. Lisa, if this goes wrong, they'll kill you. If we do nothing, they'll kill 50,000 colonists, she replied calmly. Besides, the plan only works if they believe I'm surrendering out of desperation. Dr. Ben Carter looked up from his equipment. The nanotechnology is ready. Once it's in your bloodstream, it'll be undetectable to their scans. But you'll only have about 72 hours before your immune system clears it out. That should be enough time, Lisa said. If I can get aboard their command ship and access their main computer systems, I can find the exact coordinates of the prison world. And if you can't? Jake asked. Then at least we'll know their ship layouts and defensive capabilities when you come to rescue me. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell entered the briefing room carrying a tablet full of tactical data. Captain, I've been analyzing their fleet movements. They're not positioning like a military force preparing for battle. What do you mean? They're positioning like researchers setting up an experiment. They want to observe our response, not engage in actual combat. Jake studied the tactical display. Ryan was right. The Zeltharian ships were spread out in an observation pattern, not a defensive formation. They're so confident in their superiority that they're not even taking us seriously as a threat, he realized. Which could be an advantage, Lisa pointed out. If they don't expect us to fight back effectively, they won't be prepared when we do. The next morning, Lisa's shuttle approached the Zeltharian flagship. She had sent a message claiming that humanity was ready to accept Zeltharian guidance in exchange for the return of the colonists. It was exactly what Admiral Krexthal expected to hear. Admiral, she said when she was brought before him, my government has authorized me to negotiate humanity's surrender. Krexthal made that chiming sound of satisfaction. How quickly the mask falls away. Yesterday, your Captain Morrison spoke of doing whatever it takes. Today, you offer submission. We're not a warlike species, Admiral. We prefer negotiation to violence, as we expected. The Zeltharian hegemony will be pleased to guide humanity toward true civilization. Lisa spent the next 3 days aboard the alien ship, apparently negotiating terms for humanity's surrender, while secretly gathering intelligence. The nanotechnology in her bloodstream was recording everything it encountered, mapping the ship's systems and identifying weaknesses. What she discovered was disturbing. The Zeltharians had done this before many times. Their computer files contained records of dozens of species that had been guided into submission through similar tactics. But she also discovered something else. The Zeltharians had never faced organized resistance. Their entire military doctrine was based on intimidation and technological superiority. They had no experience with actual combat against a determined enemy. On the 3rd day, Captain Morrison launched what appeared to be a desperate rescue attempt. The Aurora's Edge attacked the Zeltharian fleet in a suicidal assault that seemed to end with the ship's destruction in a massive explosion. Admiral Krexthal watched the explosion with satisfaction. Your Captain Morrison chose the path of violence after all. How predictable. Lisa forced herself to appear devastated. You killed him. He killed himself, Krexthal corrected. Primitive aggression leading to self-destruction. It's a pattern we've seen many times. What the Admiral didn't know was that the destroyed ship had been a decoy, packed with sensors and recording equipment. The real Aurora's Edge had been hidden behind a nearby asteroid, along with a dozen other human ships that had been shadowing the Zeltharian fleet for weeks. Lieutenant Commander Ryan, Bell watched the deception unfold from the bridge of the real Aurora's Edge. Phase 1 complete, Captain. They have no idea we're here. Good, Jake replied. How's our intelligence gathering? Better than expected. Lisa's nanobots have mapped their entire command structure. We know the location of every ship, every base, and every weakness in their defenses. Dr. Carter was monitoring the biological warfare component of their plan. The virus is ready for deployment. It's specifically designed for Zeltharian physiology and will be undetectable until symptoms begin. Jake looked at the tactical display showing the positions of both fleets. The Zeltharians had spread their ships wide, confident that they were dealing with a defeated enemy. They had no idea that they were about to face something their species had never encountered before. Signal the fleet, Jake ordered. Begin Phase 2. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out. Humanity had spent 3 days positioning assets and preparing for a campaign that would teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The Zeltharians had wanted to see humanity's true nature when pushed too far. They were about to get their wish, but not in any way they could have imagined. The sleeping predator was finally awake, and it was very, very angry. Commander Lisa Hayes had been aboard the Zeltharian flagship for 5 days, playing the role of defeated negotiator, while her nanobots quietly infiltrated every system on the ship. The tiny machines in her bloodstream were designed to survive for a week before her immune system destroyed them, and she was using every hour effectively. Admiral Krexthal seemed pleased with humanity's apparent surrender. He spent long hours explaining to Lisa how the Zeltharian hegemony would restructure human society to eliminate their dangerous tendencies. Your species will be relocated to supervised worlds where you can be properly guided, he explained during one of their daily meetings. No more weapons, no more independent governments, no more of the chaos that marked your primitive history. And the colonists on Kepler 442c? Lisa asked. They will serve as an excellent example. Already they are learning the value of cooperation over competition. Survival in primitive conditions has a way of teaching proper priorities. Lisa forced herself to nod as if she agreed, while internally cataloging every detail of the ship's security systems. The nanobots had given her access to the Zeltharian computer network, and what she found there made her blood run cold. The hegemony had done this to 47 different species over the past 1,000 years. Each time they would identify a developing civilization, study their psychology and culture, then engineer a crisis that would demonstrate their need for guidance. Some species had submitted immediately. Others had fought back and been systematically broken down until they begged for Zeltharian protection. None had ever successfully resisted, but Lisa was also learning something else. The Zeltharians had never faced a species with human military doctrine. Their own approach to conflict was based entirely on technological superiority and psychological pressure. They had no experience with guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, or enemies who refused to fight fair. On the 6th day, everything changed. Admiral Krexthal was in his command center when the first reports started coming in. A Zeltharian supply convoy had been attacked at the edge of their territory. The attackers had appeared from nowhere, struck with precision, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Probably pirates, one of his advisors suggested. Perhaps they're taking advantage of our focus on the human situation. But Krexthal had an uncomfortable feeling. What exactly did the survivors report? That's the strange part, Admiral. The attackers seemed to know exactly what they were looking for. They targeted the convoy's communication equipment and navigation computers specifically, then left most of the cargo untouched. Over the next 12 hours, 6 more attacks followed the same pattern. Zeltharian installations were hit by unknown forces who seemed more interested in gathering intelligence than causing damage. But they left behind something that made the Admiral very nervous. Fear. The survivors all reported the same thing. The attackers moved like shadows, struck without warning, and disappeared before anyone could get a clear look at them. For a species that had controlled the galaxy through superior technology and intimidation, the experience of being hunted was completely alien. "Sir," another advisor approached with a data tablet, "we're receiving reports from across our territory. Supply lines are being disrupted, communication arrays are being sabotaged, and our patrol ships are reporting mysterious contacts that disappear when they investigate." Krexthal studied the reports with growing unease. The attacks were too coordinated to be random piracy, but who had the capability to launch simultaneous strikes across 12 star systems? Could it be the humans? The golden-scaled advisor asked quietly. "Impossible," Krexthal replied immediately. "We destroyed their ship. Their fleet is tiny, and their technology is inferior to ours." But even as he said it, doubt was creeping in. The human Captain Morrison had seemed surprisingly calm for someone whose diplomatic mission had failed. And Commander Hayes had been almost too eager to negotiate humanity's surrender. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell was coordinating the harassment campaign from the real Aurora's edge, hidden in an asteroid field 3 systems away. Around him, human tactical officers monitored strikes across Zeltharian space with professional satisfaction. Strike. Team 7 reports successful infiltration of the communications hub on Zeltharian Prime, reported Lieutenant Jenny Walsh. They've planted listening devices throughout the facility and extracted intelligence on fleet movements. Strike. Team 12 has completed the supply depot raid, added Ensign Mike Foster. No casualties on our side, but the Zeltharians are now missing 2 weeks' worth of medical supplies for their forward bases. Captain Jake Morrison studied the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The human fleet had been split into dozens of small units, each one targeting a different aspect of Zeltharian infrastructure. They weren't trying to defeat the alien military directly. Instead, they were demonstrating something much more frightening: that nowhere in Zeltharian space was safe. "Captain," Dr. Ben Carter called from his science station, "I'm reading increased stress indicators in the Zeltharian communication traffic. Their commanders are starting to panic." "Good," Jake replied. "Fear is a weapon they've never had to face before." The psychological warfare campaign was working exactly as planned. Humans had spent millennia learning how to hunt creatures that were bigger, stronger, and better armed than they were. The tactics that had worked against cave bears and saber-toothed cats worked just as well against an overconfident alien empire. Meanwhile, aboard the Zeltharian flagship, Lisa was watching the aliens' growing paranoia with professional interest. Admiral Krexthal had tripled security and was demanding hourly reports from across his territory. "These attacks," he said to Lisa during their daily meeting, "could your people be responsible?" Lisa looked genuinely confused. "Admiral, you destroyed our ship. How could we be attacking your territory? Perhaps your government sent additional forces," the Golden Advisor suggested. "Our entire fleet consists of maybe 200 ships," Lisa replied truthfully. "Most of them are exploration vessels, not warships. We couldn't mount this kind of coordinated campaign even if we wanted to." It was true, technically. Humanity's official fleet was small and largely peaceful. What the Zeltharians didn't understand was that humans didn't need massive warships to be dangerous. A single stealth ship with a determined crew could cause more psychological damage than a fleet of battleships. "Then who is responsible for these attacks?" Krexthal demanded. "Maybe some of the other species you've guided over the centuries are finally fighting back," Lisa suggested innocently. The Admiral's scales shifted to a darker color, indicating agitation. "That's impossible. Once a species accepts our guidance, they lose the capability for organized resistance." "Then I don't know what to tell you, Admiral." That evening, the Zeltharian paranoia reached a new level when one of their major shipyards simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, but completely empty. Every ship, every piece of equipment, every computer file had been removed with surgical precision. The message was clear. The hunters could strike anywhere, anytime, and take whatever they wanted. Admiral Krexthal stood in his command center, staring at the reports from the missing shipyard. Around him, his advisors were arguing about possible explanations. But he was no longer listening. For the first time in his life. He was afraid, sir. A communication officer approached nervously. We're receiving a transmission from an unknown source. It's directed specifically at you. The main screen flickered and Captain Jake Morrison's face appeared. But this wasn't the diplomatic Jake Morrison who had visited their ship weeks ago. This was something else entirely. Admiral Krexthal, Jake said calmly. I believe you wanted to see humanity's true nature when pushed too far. The bridge fell silent. Every Zeltharian present stared at the screen in shock. You're dead, Krexthal whispered. We destroyed your ship. You destroyed a decoy, Jake replied. Did you really think we would meet with you without backup plans? Impossible. Our sensors detected no other ships. Jake's smile was cold and predatory. Admiral, you've spent so long dealing with species that fight the way you expect them to fight. You have no idea how to handle an enemy that refuses to play by your rules. The transmission cut off, leaving the Zeltharian command center in stunned silence. How many human ships are out there? The Golden Advisor asked quietly. Admiral Krexthal stared at the empty screen, finally understanding that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans hadn't been weakened by his experiment. They had been studying him just as carefully as he had been studying them, and now the predators were loose in his territory. Admiral Krexthal had not slept in 3 days. The reports coming in from across Zeltharian territory were getting worse by the hour. Human strike teams were everywhere, hitting targets that should have been impossible to reach, extracting information that should have been impossible to access. Admiral, his golden-scaled advisor approached with another data tablet. The humans have sent another message. This one is being broadcast on all frequencies across our territory. The main screen activated, showing Captain Jake Morrison sitting calmly in what appeared to be a Zeltharian command center. Behind him, human soldiers were working at alien computer terminals. Admiral Krexthal, Jake said in the same conversational tone he had used during their first diplomatic meeting. I hope you're beginning to understand what you've awakened. Krexthal stepped closer to the screen, his large eyes trying to identify the location. Where are you? I'm aboard one of your forward command bases, Jake replied casually. Don't bother trying to identify which one. By the time you receive this message, we'll have moved on to our next objective. The Admiral felt something cold spread through his chest. Human forces had infiltrated one of his most secure installations without triggering a single alarm. What do you want? Krexthal asked. The same thing I wanted 3 weeks ago, Jake replied. The safe return of 50,000 human civilians. The difference is that now I'm not asking nicely. You cannot possibly believe that terrorism will force our compliance. Jake's expression didn't change. Admiral, you wanted to study human psychology under pressure. Let me share something interesting about my species. When our pack is threatened, we don't negotiate. We hunt. The transmission shifted to show dozens of different locations across Zeltharian space. Human teams were operating on planets, space stations, and ships throughout the hegemony's territory. You see, you made one critical error in your research, Jake continued. You assumed that our peaceful behavior represented our natural state. But humans only developed civilization as a tool for more effective cooperation during warfare. Admiral Krexthal watched in growing horror as the images showed human soldiers moving through Zeltharian installations with terrifying efficiency. They weren't destroying everything they found. They were taking what they needed and leaving the rest like predators who killed only what they could eat. Every one of my people out there is a volunteer, Jake said. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, and civilians who heard that children were being held hostage on a primitive world. Do you know what happens when you threaten human children, Admiral? The screen showed more footage. Zeltharian ships being boarded and captured, supply convoys being systematically hunted down, communication networks being infiltrated and turned against their owners. You see, your species has controlled the galaxy for so long that you've forgotten what actual predators look like. Jake continued. You use superior technology and intimidation to force submission. We use intelligence, patience, and absolute determination to eliminate threats to our pack. Admiral Krexthal realized he was seeing something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans weren't trying to conquer Zeltharian territory. They were systematically demonstrating that nowhere in the hegemony was safe from their reach. I'll give you one chance to end this peacefully, Jake said. Return our people, withdraw from human space, and promise never to interfere with humanity again. In exchange, we'll stop hunting you. And if we refuse? Krexthal asked. though he was already afraid of the answer. Jake's smile was the coldest thing the Admiral had ever seen. Then you'll learn why humans became the dominant species on a planet full of creatures that were bigger, stronger, and faster than we were. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in dead silence. "Admiral," the communication officer said quietly, "we're receiving reports of simultaneous attacks on 17 different installations. The humans are moving faster than our response teams can coordinate." Krexthal looked around at his advisors and saw fear in their faces. For the first time in hegemony history, they were facing an enemy that refused to be intimidated by superior technology. "Sir," another officer approached, "there's something else. Dr. Carter's biological analysis was correct. We're detecting traces of an unknown pathogen in our air systems." The Admiral's scales shifted to deep purple, indicating extreme distress. "A biological weapon?" "Specifically designed for our physiology, sir. It appears to target our immune systems. The first symptoms won't appear for several days, but once they do..." Krexthal didn't need to hear the rest. The humans had infected his entire fleet with a plague that would kill them all, unless they received treatment that only humanity could provide. "How long do we have?" he asked quietly. "Based on the viral structure, perhaps 48 hours before the first deaths begin." Commander Lisa Hayes chose that moment to enter the bridge. She had maintained her role as defeated negotiator for over a week, but now her expression was as cold as her captain's had been. "Admiral," she said calmly, "I believe you wanted to see humanity's true nature." "You poisoned us," Krexthal accused. "We infected you with a targeted biological agent," Lisa corrected. "The same way you infected our entire species with your experiment. The difference is that our weapon can be cured. What do you want?" "The coordinates to the prison world where you dumped our civilians," Lisa replied. "And immediate withdrawal of all Zeltharian forces from human space." "You're terrorists," the Golden Advisor said weakly. Lisa looked at him with genuine curiosity. "Admiral Krexthal, how many species has the hegemony destroyed over the past 1,000 years?" "We have never destroyed a species," Krexthal replied. "We guide them toward civilization." "You break them down until they beg for your protection," Lisa corrected. 47 different civilizations according to your own records. How many individuals died in the process of your guidance?" The Admiral was quiet. "Millions," Lisa continued. "Billions across all those worlds. But you call it guidance because it makes you feel better about yourselves." She stepped closer to the alien leader. "Humans have a different approach. When something threatens our pack, we eliminate the threat. Completely and permanently." "The colonists," Krexthal said desperately, "they're already dying on that primitive world. Without our help, they won't survive another month." "Then you'd better give us those coordinates quickly," Lisa replied. The next 6 hours were the longest in Admiral Krexthal's life. His medical officers confirmed that the human biological weapon was spreading through his entire fleet. The virus was elegantly designed. It would kill them, but slowly enough to give them time to comply with human demands. More reports came in from across Zeltharian territory. Human strike teams had hit every major installation in the hegemony, always taking what they needed and leaving behind proof that they could reach anywhere they chose. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost contact with our outer system bases. It appears the humans have systematically destroyed our early warning network." "What about our defense fleet?" "Half of our ships report boarding actions. The humans aren't trying to destroy them, they're taking them intact." Krexthal realized what the humans were doing. They weren't conquering the hegemony. They were demonstrating that they could take it apart piece by piece whenever they chose to do so. "Sir," the communication officer approached with obvious reluctance. "Captain Morrison is transmitting again." Jake's face appeared on the screen, but this time he was aboard a Zeltharian battleship with human crew members operating the alien systems behind him. "Admiral," Jake said pleasantly, "I hope you've had time to consider our offer." "You're pirates," Krexthal said weakly. "We're parents. Teachers, engineers, and scientists who volunteered to rescue our people," Jake corrected. "But when our children are threatened, we become something else entirely. What happens to the hegemony if we comply?" "You get to keep existing," Jake replied. "Withdraw to your core systems. Leave the other species alone and you can continue your civilization in peace. Refuse, and discover what happens when an apex predator decides you're a threat to the pack." Admiral Krexthal looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. They were all waiting for his decision, but he could see that they already knew what it had to be. "The coordinates are being transmitted now," he said quietly. "Excellent. The antidote will be distributed to your fleet within the hour. And the hegemony will have learned a valuable lesson about the difference between civilization and domestication," Jake replied. "Humans chose to be peaceful, Admiral. That choice can be revoked." The transmission ended and Admiral Krexthal slumped in his command chair. Around him, his officers were already beginning the process of withdrawing Zeltharian forces from human space and the territories of the other species they had been guiding. 3 days later, the rescue fleet reached Kepler 442c. The colonists were alive, but barely. They had been forced to survive on a harsh world with no technology, no medical supplies, and no shelter except what they could build with their hands. When Captain Jake Morrison walked among the survivors, he saw the price of the Zeltharian experiment. Elderly colonists who had died from exposure, children weakened by malnutrition, families torn apart by the struggle for survival.